Morning, everyone. How are you all? I'm going to turn on the chats in Zoom, right? The chat for YouTube will unfortunately remain off today, right? So if you need to say anything, if you have a question, you'll have to join the Zoom class. There is room and communicate that way, right? Now, per the request of the class, we're doing government in the Caribbean, right? And today, what I want to focus on is an overview of the types of governments in the Caribbean. Let me turn on the recording for this. Right, so today we're going to focus on the types of government in the Caribbean. Then we want to talk about the general structure of the different types of government. And then go into a little bit more detail on what the different parts of the structure, what are their roles and responsibilities, right? And if there's something else that we don't cover in relation to government, by all means, you could ask. And we have 2 classes left after today, right? So we could fit it in. Okay, so we have our topic written down, and on the screen here, I have, this is the link to the recording, and I will put up a link to the slides. It's not there yet, right? But this is the page with all the class recordings and any links or homework that that's shared will be here too, right? All right, so let's get into it. Right? Okay, now the major focus for us will be the English speaking Caribbean, right? So parts of the Caribbean that are not English speaking, that they were once Spanish territories or Dutch territories or French territories, we're not so much concerned with their government structure. We're concerned with the English speaking government structure. And what do we call those territories? So actually, let's go to that first. We call those territories the Commonwealth, right? We say that they belong to the Commonwealth. So this is what we're going to discuss first. Types of government systems in the Commonwealth Caribbean. And what Commonwealth means is formerly British territories. Right? So former British territories. Okay, because their government system evolved due to similar historical forces or shaped by similar historical conditions. So this is what we're looking at. Right? So we should know the topic. We should have noted the topic, governments in the Caribbean. And now we should note this topic too, types of government systems in Commonwealth, right? And the definition as well, if it's something we didn't know before. Right? All right. Let's look at the 3 types, right? Yes, guys. So just in general, assume even if I don't say write it down, that you'll have to write it down, right? I will most likely say you don't have to write down something, but just imagine that all of the information you're getting, you need to take note of, right? All right, if you're confused about anything that I'm explaining, you'll tell me, right? All right, let's look at the first type of government system. All right, so type 1 that we're looking at is a crown colony government. Crown colony, right? So some territories in the Caribbean are called crown colonies, right? Now, what that means is that their legal system, their legislature, which we will explain later on, but basically that's the mechanism they have for creating laws. Their administration, so that means the politicians, because politicians are supposed to be administrators who perform jobs and functions for the people, right? They are under more control by the British monarch, right? The British monarch right now is King Charles. Prior to him, it was Queen Elizabeth. Full government has more of a say in what goes on in the colony, right? Who occupies an office, whether or not something becomes law. All right, so that's crown colony. Now we're gonna come back and say which countries are crown colonies, but I want to do that after we talk about the types. So to keep your notes organized, I would say skip about 4 lines here. Right? You might not need all 4. I don't know how large some people write, but let's skip some lines there, right? All right, the next type we have, oh, sorry, I have one more detail here for you. The crown is represented by a governor in the territory. So whereas like in an independent system, we would have a prime minister and a president, they have a governor, right? All right, now we come into type 2. So here you could skip your 4 lines. Okay, these territories are also sometimes called dependencies. Or we say they are dependent territories. All right, let's talk about type 2. Who knows what type 2 is? What's the second type? Constitutional monarchies, right? So these countries are what we would say are independent. Now, when we see monarchy, we probably think, oh, okay, well, the head of government is a king. And I suppose technically, yes, that is true. But the word constitution means a written down set of laws and rules and regulations. So the country is governed by a constitution. All right, so constitutional monarchy. The monarch of Britain is the head of state. Right, so notice we're saying head of state and not head of government, right? Head of state means like the equivalent of a president in some countries. The monarch has to act according to the constitution in the country, which is the official system of laws, right? And by the way, that is the same in Britannia. The monarch cannot just decide to throw out a particular law or to ignore a particular law. The monarch also has to be accountable to the law. The monarch strives to stay sort of impartial and yeah. So even up here where we talk about the crown colony and we say that the legislature is controlled by the British monarch, it's controlled by the British government system, All right, so I'm gonna put monarch / government up here actually, right? I just want us to understand it, that the role of the government, the role of the monarch, sorry, is like the role of the president in a country with a president. They can't just decide, I am not signing this law, I disagree with it, once it has followed due process. They could argue against it, they could address parliament, they could talk, but they cannot, if the overwhelming majority has decided this is what we're doing, then that's what they have to do, right? Right. So the monarch has to act according to a constitution in country, which is the official system of laws. And then we come to type 3. Can a government, this is a good question. Can a government be a constitutional monarchy and also a crown colony? No. It has to be one or the other. Or the third thing. Right? It can't be the two things at the same time. Right? So any constitutional monarchy, they have elections, they choose a prime minister, there's an opposition, right? So government, it's like they're more or less independent. The only difference is that the official head of state is the monarch. So the government has a prime minister and elected officials. All right, and then we come to the third type that we'll discuss. You could skip probably 3 lines this time. Yeah. Oh, actually, no, it's 4. I gave you the first one should have been 3 lines and then this one 4, but that it is not a big deal. Just 3 or 4 lines, yeah. What if there's a period of no king or queen or the governor and kind of new governor change the laws? There will never really be a period of no king or queen since when King Charles moves on to the next realm of life or death or whatever, we already know who the next monarch is going to be, right? There's always a monarch just because they always know who is going to inherit the position. Even if somebody decides, I don't want to be king or queen, they know who the throne is going to next by bloodlines. The only way that could happen is if somebody didn't have a child and then it would go to whomever the next person in the bloodline was. So that situation really wouldn't happen. Kind of new governor change the laws, not by himself or herself, right? He would have to work, he or she would have to work with the existing elected officials or appointed officials. Are there other names for these types? If you think you know another name, you could tell me, we could discuss it. But the other names that might come up, I've put here. So like, I know that crown colonies are sometimes called dependencies. And we sometimes refer to countries that are constitutional monarchies as independent countries. They won't do that on the social studies exam, but we amongst ourselves tend to talk about countries being independent and what is our day of independence and what happened when we became independent, right? So we tend to call them independent countries. And then finally, the third type is the republic. And so the republic has cut ties with the motherland, with Britain, right? Because we're looking at countries that were British. And they have a president as their head of state. So a state where the political power, let me put all the political power, is held by the people and their elected representatives, right? A president is nominated or elected. I put by a quorum generally. So it's not a general public that chooses the president. It's the prime minister and the opposition will have a short list of names, and the prime minister will have the final say, and a quorum of elected officials will vote, but the vote is usually a confirmation that it's unlikely they will go against the prime minister unless they see like a big red flag. What is meant by the monarch has to act according to the constitutions. It means that if the Constitution has written in it a law that all children must attend school, the monarch cannot pardon or excuse some parents from sending their children to school, right? After the third one, okay, after the second one, let's do the 4 lines again. I don't want to tell you too little space and then you run out of space, but it's possible you might have extra, right? All right. Any questions so far on these 3 types? Or maybe did you ask one in the chat and I didn't address it? Just you could ask it again, please, because I don't have any other messages lit up. So I think I answered what I saw, right? All right, and we call these countries republics. So you could think about, you have to ask in the chat, I'm not unmuting anybody, right, guys? You could think about this as kind of like a line. Like we are all generally headed in this direction. Perhaps, right? Where we have less independence. And we have the most independence we could have, right? And so republic will be over here. Constitutional monarchy will be closer to there. And then crown colonies will be over here. Right? All right, so the next thing I want to do is talk about which islands or which territories fall into these different categories. So while you all finish this note, I'm just going to check through the chat. All right, so some people are asking about executive, legislature, legislative, and judiciary. That is when we look at how the republic is organized, how the constitutional monarchy is organized. So we get into that a few slides down, right? All right, I will show you a diagram with heads of states coming up, but let me clarify that there's a head of state and then there's a head of government, right? The head of state in the constitutional monarchy is the British monarch, right? And a head of state usually has a ceremonial role. They hand out awards, they are present for parades. They could have a more active role if they speak out about certain policies that they have an opinion on, right? But that is the head of state role, okay? And so for constitutional monarchies, that is the monarch of Britain, but it could be that they have an appointed governor general or governor. Right? If the monarch of Britain cannot attend all speaking engagements, they have a governor appointed for each territory, and it's their job to act as head of state, right? Then you have a head of government. And the head of government is the person that oversees the day-to-day role of the party in power. They have a function in parliament, they shape the ministries, they do all the things that we've seen our prime ministers doing. And so republics have a prime minister and constitutional monarchies also have a prime minister. Government has prime minister and elected officials. So this is the head of government. right? So I could add in at the bottom here, if it will help, by republic, president, and prime minister, right? So I'm just explaining it right now, but it will come up in later slides where you could write down. If you feel this is confusing or something, you will not remember that president is head of government. Sorry, president is head of state and prime minister is head of government. It will come up later. Right, Ryan, so hold that question for when we're talking about law. Okay, Skylar, it's all it's one syllabus that everybody uses, and so we're doing topics that you will meet. I don't know when you will meet it. I don't know which term, I don't know which form. Different teachers organize it in different ways, right? I said this a little while ago, legislature, executive, judiciary will come up in a later slide, right? So are there any questions about these three things that people don't understand and they want to ask again, you could ask again. And if not, then let's start to talk about, anybody still writing? If you're still writing, can I see a hand? Okay, some people are still writing. So let us take a couple minutes to give people a chance to write. And we will, in 2 minutes, I'll ask, or if you're done writing, actually, this is what you can put in the chat. Which country belongs to which type? So which countries in the Caribbean, which ones are republics, which ones are crown colonies, which ones are constitutional monarchies? Now, how you might see these questions, this come up as a question in all right, how you might see this come up as a question in a past paper is they may ask you to define or say two things about a crown colony, or say two things, what is a constitutional monarchy, or what is a republic? And then they might ask you to give an example, right? And government could be a whole question by itself, or it could be part of a question with institutions and groups. Okay, so half a minute again. Okay, and to just one more time, the topic that we're doing, government, could be done by any form, at any level. It just depends on what your teacher decides, what your teachers decide they are teaching that term, right? There's a lot of leeway in what teachers could choose, right? It's one syllabus, but how people arrange the topics will be different. No, you never have to draw a diagram. When diagram comes up, you could just write it out to take notes of whatever it is, right? Okay, ready? Can I clear this away? We're gonna say which countries are republics first. No, there are lots of countries in the Caribbean, and you need to know which one is which one is a crown colony, which one is a constitutional monarchy, which one is a republic. So I mean, my strategy is learn the smaller groups. So one smaller group is the republic, and one smaller group is the crown colony. Actually, I have a story of Suez that we could look at to give us a little break from the slide. You want to look at it? Or should we do all the countries first and then? All right, last 10 seconds, we'll do the countries. No, let's look at it because the countries will take a little while and you might get a little frustrated. So I don't want that to happen. All right, so last 10 seconds here. Right. Okay, this is Book of Magic. Some of you may have seen it before. I don't know. You're in the library on a Saturday afternoon. You find a strange book, you open it, against the book. There's the book. Oh my God, it's on fire. Beyond your control, transport to such strange world. All right, so you're gonna have to make choices to help you get through the strange book, right? You explore a rocky area, and suddenly a strange glowing creature rises from the dirt. I think it's this creature. Hello, stranger. Welcome to the land of Esper. Come closer so I may shake your hand. Welcome you. That's not strange at all. What are you gonna do? Trust the creature, shake his hand, or are you going to run? Make your choice. Who wouldn't trust a kitten dressed in armor? And the numbers seem to be evenly split. Some people are like run, and some people are like trust. So let's see what happens. Okay, well, if you trusted, the creature shakes your hand and hands you a map. He seems to genuinely want to help you, so you get 3 points. These points mean absolutely nothing, by the way. And those of you who ran, you run in fear and stumble over some rocks and hurt your arms and ribs. So you lose 2 points. So some of us have started the game on a deficit. All right, keep track of your points. They're very not important. Okay, let's do one more, and then we'll go back to the countries. After walking a while, you see a strange arch with a treasure chest at the entrance. Then a strange appears over the lake in front of the arch. I don't remember this from the last time I did this story. I think it's been revised. What we doing here? How dare you come to my lake? Want treasure, huh? You will not leave here alive. So should we what should we do? Should we go for the treasure? Do we tell her nobody wants your lame treasure? Do we tell her she needs to use some toothpaste? Do we push her aside and take the gold? I'm gonna go with the toothpaste option because pushing people is rude. All right, let's see. Ah, yes. Okay. So the first one, if you tell her nobody wants her treasure, then the word lame in her language is a huge insult and she turns you into a rat. If you offer her the toothpaste, she takes your advice, and now more people are nice to her. She thanks you and gives you gold. Yeah, yeah, 4 points. All right. If you push her aside, she's incredibly strong for a witch and she breaks your hand. Oh no. Oh my. Okay. All right, let's go back to our oh, okay, wait, come back, come back. We'll do this one after. Yeah. All right, let's go back to our notes. Okay, if you think you know, it is just a reminder at the bottom here, you don't have to write this, right? I already told you, and you probably already wrote it down in fewer words. Wales means they used to be a colony of Britain. So not France and not Spain. So it wouldn't include Cuba or Guadeloupe, etc., right? When we are thinking about which country is which, right? So Republic Swiss, which countries are the Republic? Some people have 7 points from the game. All right, I see how it is. We'll find you all. We'll make you share those points. Just kidding. All right, come. Who's the Republic? So republics in the Caribbean are Barbados. I think Barbados is the most recent, and yeah. Dominica, not the Dominican Republic, which is next to Haiti, but Dominica, the island, right? Guyana is a republic, and Trinidad and Tobago. Yes. All right, so make sure we write these down. Not Jamaica. Jamaica is a constitutional monarchy. They were having a conversation just the other day about whether or not they should become a republic. And they probably will. I mean, I guess they probably will soon. All right, the next one we're going to do is crown colonies. That's the one on top, right? Oh, somebody was asking me earlier about other names for these things, and I told you a crown colony was called a dependency. Something else it's called. So if you were going to, I mean, you would never do this, but if you were going to Google to look for the countries that are crown colonies, you could look for a British overseas territory. That's what you're looking for, right? The issue is that it wouldn't just give you the Caribbean, it would give you like everywhere that it has an overseas territory, which is not just in the Caribbean. But you could separate out because you know who is in the Caribbean and who is not. But that will give you a more accurate answer than if you just put Crown Colony into Google. So the countries at the bottom are for Republic, right? That's this one, Republic. And then we're going to put the countries on top that are the crown colonies or a British overseas territory or dependencies. All right, I'm going to write some and y'all are going to tell me the rest. So we're not considering countries like Venezuela because they are not part of the Commonwealth, right? Okay, so Anguilla. Let me put this, should I put this in a different ink? A different color? Is what, right? Bermuda is another. British Virgin Islands, sometimes referred to as BVI, right? And it's not to be confused with there's an American Virgin Islands, so not them, right? Obviously. Cayman Islands. Okay, I'll check the chat in a minute, right? I can't check right now. Or I'll lose my train of thought, and then, well, you know how old people are. We'll get derailed. Montserrat. Now, how do you all spell Montserrat? Montserrat. Feel sometimes I see the spelling without the T in the middle, but I'm putting the T today. All right. Okay. Now I want to hear from you. Do you all know any others? Am I really getting the question? Is Barbados a republic? Did we not just one say that and two write it on the screen? Okay, so for somewhere to be a crown colony or British overseas territories, it must not be independent, right? I'm just pausing a little bit, letting people write down everything. And if you think I left any out, you could tell me. Oh, I think I left out one. I think I left out Turks and Caicos. We have Anguilla, we have Bermuda, we have British Virgin Islands, we have Cayman Islands, Montserrat, Turks and Caicos, right? The other islands, once you could find a an independence date for it, it is not a British overseas territory, right? Turks and Caicos is the other one. Right? So I always tell people learn these two groups and then everybody else falls in the middle group, the constitutional monarchy, right? Okay, so Cuba is not one of the is not a member of the Commonwealth because their government system was shaped by Spain because they were a Spanish territory. Puerto Rico is an American associated state, right? Jamaica is a constitutional monarchy. It has a prime minister and a government. Skylar, these territories are not in the Caribbean, right? So we wouldn't include those. Panama is a part of Latin America, right? So we are only concerned with the English speaking part of the Caribbean for social studies. English speaking part of the Caribbean, right? Yeah, I guess technically Belize is English speaking, but we don't think about it in social studies. Grenada is a constitutional monarchy, right? So any other territory that you think I have not included, check and see if you could find an independence date for it. If they have a year that they became independent, then they're not an overseas territory, right? Okay, so now let's look at constitutional monarchies. All right, so a reminder, what I suggested is if there's something in government that you want to make sure we cover, and you don't see it in today's presentation, you can put it into the chat, right? And I will try and make sure we include it to the next 2 weeks. Right, constitutional monarchies. Which countries are constitutional monarchies? So Jamaica keeps coming up. So that's Jamaica. We're putting Jamaica in here first. Right, so this is going into the 4 lines that you skipped. All right, who else did we leave out? Besides Jamaica, what other islands we haven't accounted for yet? Well, I'm trying to go, even though I know I put Jamaica first, I'm trying to go alphabetically now, right? Antigua and Barbuda. Grenada also kept coming up, so I'm going to skip the alphabetical order and put them here too. Belize, sometimes Belize is considered part of the English-speaking Caribbean. They would fall in here, right? So I'm putting them in here. We already said Grenada, sorry, Jamaica, where else? All right, St. Kitts Nevis. St. Lucia. St. Vincent and Grenadines. The Bahamas, yes. Did I leave out Bahamas? Yes, I did. Sorry about that. So Bahamas. All right. Have I left out any Caribbean territory? English-speaking Caribbean territory. You could check and tell me, right? I'm going to the chat. Right? St. Lucia, we have St. Lucia, right? Yes. I wrote out Saint for St. Lucia for some reason, but you could put ST. Haiti is not part of the English-speaking Caribbean, so we don't include it as one of the ones that we have to do. If anybody asks me about a country that is already on the screen, I'm going to take away some of your points and you'll be trapped in the land of magic forever. Guyana is a republic, so not a constitutional monarchy, right? Yes, Bahamas, Ada nuts, right? Yes. St. Lucia, yes. Antigua and Barbuda, yes. St. Vincent and Grenadines, yes. Good. Anywhere anybody thinks is not accounted for, anywhere you think I made a mistake, you could say, but make sure not on the screen because then I will take away your points. And Haiti is not a part of the English-speaking Caribbean, so we do not include it in this division. But if you were going to, I think it would count as a republic, but it was formerly the last European territory it had there was France. So the French government system, it took its independence centuries ago before anybody else did. Bermuda is up by the overseas territories, the crown colonies. Curacao is Dutch, Cuba is Spanish. In terms of the government structure, right? So we're not business with them right now. Let me rephrase that. You would not be required to know about their government. All right. So half a minute again, 1 minute again, and then we're moving on from the slide, right? And if you need, and you still need time with the notes, you have to come back to the recording. Suriname is also influenced by Dutch systems rather than British systems, right? Our focus is really on countries that are influenced by British systems of government. Commonwealth and CARICOM are not the same thing. No. Commonwealth means we were formerly British territories, right? So that actually includes countries like Canada and Australia, as well as other countries around the world, right? The former British territories. New Zealand, yeah. But CARICOM means Caribbean Community, right? So the countries in the Caribbean that have formed an economic community. Okay, one person is requesting MPs as a topic we make sure we cover in government. If there's anything else anybody wants to request, please say, right? All right, ready to move on? Right, but and if we do MPs, what we're looking at is what their role and responsibility is, right? Grenada is a constitutional monarchy. Look at right up here in pink, right? So guys, I'm a little concerned. I think that we need to make sure we have written down and check carefully the islands, but you'll do that for homework. Come back to the recording, double check that you've written down all the territories that are on the screen, right? Do a count and then count your note and see if anything is missing. Okay, let's clear this away. Before we do this, I want to go back to here. Now, in this slide, you don't need to write all the notes. You could just generally take notes, right? We want to understand the difference between authoritarian and democratic governments. You don't need to write down everything, and I probably will not have the slide up long enough for you to write down everything. All right, so what is an authoritarian government and what is a democratic government? So first I'll talk about authoritarian. And we're doing this because we want to learn about democratic governments, which is generally the type in the English-speaking Caribbean, right? Dictators tend to come up in Latin American countries. And I mean, I guess you could say Haiti, some of their political leaders have been described as dictators. So that's one of the reasons when we study government, we're looking at English speaking territories, former British territories, right? Because they share a certain type of government. All right, so authoritarian governments tend to be governments where the leader decides he's the leader. So people don't vote him into power or her, but it is a tend to be male, right? They appoint themselves. And then when they are on their way out, because they're going to flee the country or they're going to die from an illness or old age, they appoint their successor. They say, after I'm gone, this is who will lead you, right? It doesn't matter what the law says. It doesn't matter what people want. In an authoritarian government, the leader appoints himself, right? If there is an election, the election is rigged, meaning that the outcome is predetermined. They already know who is going to win. Okay? So if y'all reading news around election time in some countries, you might hear that. Right, they do not take opinions from others, yes. Okay. All right, Tobago House of Assembly noted as a topic. Yeah, I haven't been following what is going on with Cuban government recently, but like it used to be in Cuba, right? Yes, exactly. Authoritarian governments are not democratic governments. All right, what happens with elections? It's dictated by the ruler. So nobody knows when it's going to happen, but they definitely know what the outcome will be, right? So they're not held regularly, they're not held at all, or when they are held, the outcome is, like we said, predetermined, right? The branches of the government. So when we study the branches of the government just now in about 5 minutes, right, we will see that we try to keep them separate. But in an authoritarian government, it's the ruler and his party that have most of the power. And the judges, the lawyers, the police, they are not, they don't have to follow the law. They follow the whims of the leader and what they could get away with, right? People cannot speak up, so they are restricted and they are often in fear. So if I have to highlight keywords from this, right? Elections dictated by the ruler, right? Not regular, okay? Branches of the government, the power is concentrated in ruler and his party, his supporters, right? Voice of the people, restricted. Fear. All right, let's look at what makes up how is a democratic government different? So democratic governments, let's change the color here. We'll put it in green, right? So it's the leader is elected. There's a process. The process is the same each time. And the process is determined by laws and a constitution. So it cannot be that I call elections when I feel like it. It has to be that I call elections every 5 years. And in order to call elections, I have to do something. I have to dissolve the parliament. I have to organize observers to come in and see that the election process is fair. There's a process that has to be followed. It's written into the law. We cannot, the most leeway they might get is maybe you could call elections in this month, but you have to follow it by this particular month. So between April and September, there must be elections. Whether you call it in April or you call it in September, a little bit of leeway, but there's a process to follow, right? All right, so, well, I kind of just said this. Frequency is determined by law. Whether it's 5 years, it's generally 5 years, or 4 years, right? And then people's votes determine the outcome, right? Not who the leader says is going to win will win, but who people vote for, and then they are free to vote for whom they want. They don't have somebody peeping to see that they choose the correct candidate. Okay, well, we will come to your house in the middle of the night and deal with you, right? You're free to choose whichever candidate you want. It is anonymous. You are safe. The branches of the government are separate. So over here, we said they were concentrated, but over here, they are separate. And people function according to law and according to our constitution, right? So let's think about how that will work. If one is a judge, one judges according to the law and not according to what the leader and his party says they want for the outcome, right? And then voice of the people. So people are allowed to speak out. They will not get punished. They will not get threatened. Their family will not get mistreated or abused. They will not be thrown in jail, etc. Okay, if anybody has a question about these, tell me. All right. So I think we could pause. We could take a break. I could give you a few minutes to walk around, stretch your legs, get some water, do some jumping jacks, give yourself a pep talk. Right? When we come back, we're gonna look at I think we'll get into executive, judiciary, and legislative because I want to make sure we finish that today. All right. So let me pause the recording. And maybe we can start back about 12:40. All right, so we restart at 12:40. Court is in recess. All right, that 4 minutes just sped by. Oh, okay. Let's go back to Book of Magic for a couple slides. Yeah. I know the chat is off, right? Just now it's in my phone. All right, so we already dealt with the witch. We give her toothpaste. All right, as you approach the arch to get the treasure chest, place magically turns to midday and the theory changes. Just then, the treasure chest changes into something. What does it change into? A serpent? What? Your greed is your weakness, human. Now feel my fangs as they enter your flesh. Wahahaha. And also one extra one. To show the audience. I'm so unnecessary. We can tell, right? All right, let's see. What do? Throw a rock at the serpent, run up and hide in the vines of the arch. Jump in the stream and let the waters wash you away. All of these are terrible options. I'm going to jump in the stream. I feel if I throw the rock, the serpent will dodge. And if I climb up the tree, the thing will come after me because serpents could climb trees, right? All right, let's see what happens. You made your choice. A rock, really, it bounces off its thick skin and you get bitten. Run up and hide in the vines. Are you nuts? Snakes can easily climb trees and vines. You get bitten. Jump in the stream and let the waters wash you away. I hope I at least grabbed the gold before I went. Right, you took a chance, the waters wash you away fast enough from the snake. Yay! All right, one more. The stream leads to a huge waterfall where you are almost killed. What? As you swim to the riverbank safely, a strange warrior approaches you. You are surprised he knows English. He has a strange name. Strange name. Baba the river. All right. Come with me. I take you to my tribe. My tribe doctor. Look at you. This is me. All right. What do? Do we slash at him with a sharp rock? Do we accept his help? Do we extend our hand and try to throw him in the river when he grabs it? This seems like a trick situation. I'm going to extend my hand and try to throw him in the river when he grabs it. Let's see what he points for each one. Okay, accepting his help was the best option. So if we slash him, he's a warrior and he scars us for life. If you accepted his help, good choice. He would have made you go anyway. Trying to throw him in the river, he body slams you into the riverbank and you are knocked unconscious. All right. I hope some of you chose better ones than me. All right. Okay, the next thing I want to do is, I do have a diagram here, but let's do this first and then we'll come back to the diagram. If we have time. All right, so this is one of those slides where you don't need to write anything yet because this will come up just now. I just want to explain a concept, right? The government is made up of 3 general sections or 3 general branches, right? So the government, you don't need to write, just make sure we understand 3 branches, right? So if it were a tree, this is the trunk of the tree, government. This is one branch for the judiciary, one branch for the executive, and one branch for the legislative, right? Now notice we draw it so that they're separate. We do not draw it like a Venn diagram, right? Where one is judiciary, one is legislative, one is executive. No, we try to keep them separate. And why do we try to keep them separate? We try to keep them separate to minimize any abuse of power, any corruption. So you don't, I'll tell you, back on the chat now, you could comment or ask a question. You don't, if you're a judge, you cannot formulate a law so that you could benefit from it with your business interest, right? We try to keep people separate and impartial. Okay. Now you can write. All right. So the structure of government, and you don't have to write your thing sideways. you could write it going straight down, right? So the structure of government is the heading. So I'm gonna write, please take notes. Right? This is an overview, and then the next page is going to have some more details on what actually each arm does, right? So the structure of government is based on the idea of the separation of powers. So the separation of powers is an idea. So to keep these apart, right? Remember we said for authoritarian governments, the power is concentrated in the leader and his party. So he could be leader, and then he will say, all right, well, these friends of mine who are in the party, they will be in charge of forming the laws, and these friends, I want them to be judges. So whenever they have to interpret the law, they'll interpret for me. Right? In a democratic government, in a government in the British Commonwealth, we are trying to keep them separate. So the executive is one branch, legislative is one branch, the judiciary is one branch, right? They are each given different responsibilities. So they don't conflict, they don't overstep, they don't undermine each other. So we can't have a judiciary that interprets the law, a legislative that makes the law, and then the judiciary also makes the law, or the legislative also interprets the law, right? Those things need to be separate. So it's not like when one decision is made, you could go to a different arm and get it overturned or undermined, etc. Right? All right. So then we have these little explanations underneath each arm, right? So the executive is made up of the prime minister. So this is who is in it. All of these will be who are in the right? So we have a prime minister, we have a cabinet, and then we have any other ministers who run the government, right? Who is in the cabinet? Cabinet will be the ministers with portfolio. We say they have portfolios, right? So for example, Minister of Education. That person has a portfolio. They are responsible for overseeing schools. They are responsible for all the other things they're responsible for, right? 1 second. Right? Who are some other ministers we know? And sometimes the portfolios get shuffled around, right? So 1 year you might have a Ministry of Roads, Works and Transport. The next time you might call it Works and Infrastructure, and Transport might be separated. It's at the Prime Minister's prerogative. Additionally, minister could change, right? If the minister thinks, well, I need to give somebody else this job to do a better job, or they have a different perspective that might be helpful, whatever the reason is, I don't know, right? Anyhow, so prime minister, cabinet, the other ministers. So sometimes there are special ministers. They have different names in different countries, right? They could be a minister in the ministry of without being so like minister of education, but then you also have a minister in the ministry of education. Right? It doesn't have to be education, it can be something else. Okay, so for your country, you could visualize who are those people because you've heard them in the news, you've seen them in the papers, you had to learn about them in school, right? All right. Their job they put laws in effect. So this is the overview of their job. We'll go into more detail on the next slide, right? So they put laws into effect. They say, yes, this is the law, right? So for instance, Trinidad just got an extension on its summer vacation. It's sorry, July, August vacation, right? Initially, kids had to go back out to school on the 2nd. And then the ministry decided, no, you could go on the 8th. It will be okay. So they made that a law, right? Schools reopen on the 8th. That is what the ministry does. That is what the cabinet does, right? They create policies. Okay, so a policy could be, all right, we need to distribute devices to a school. And in order for the kid to get the device, the parents have to show us a utility bill and a job statement so we know that they need it, whatever the situation is. Or they decide, all right, here are some that the principal could give out at his discretion, right? But if you have a question, put it in the chat, right? All right, and they also suggest new laws. So they might say, our suggestion is we want to do away with the old point system for licenses for drivers who break laws. We don't believe that's working. People not checking it, licenses getting suspended unnecessarily, whatever it is. They make a proposal, right? All right, now the legislative arm is made up of the assembly or the parliament, right? So this is called, in some places, it's called the upper house or the Senate, and the lower house, House of Assembly, right? So their job is to make the law. They legislate. They are the legislative arm. Sometimes they are called the legislature. Right? This is just a grammar point. Legislature is the noun, and then legislative is the adjective. Right? But in like for executive now, that works, it functions as both noun and adjective. There's no executor. Same for judiciary, noun and adjective, right? But so if you see legislature, no, it's the same thing as legislative. Right? All right. So judiciary, that's our third arm. These are judges and appointed officials, right? Police officers, customs officials, attorney general. So they are not elected, they are appointed. They go through a process and they are appointed, right? And they interpret and they apply the law, right? When an arrest is made, a police officer has interpreted and applied the law, right? When a person goes in to make a report to a police officer, they interpret and apply the law. If they pursue something or if they will try to get more information or if they, that is interpreting and applying the law. Okay, think about if you're confused. In some places, this legislative, like here, it's split into two. But in some countries, the house could be what's called unicameral. Right? Probably because the population is smaller and there are not enough representatives for the two. So the upper house, instead of a full house, might be like a council. And, right? This is a bicameral house, meaning that you have an upper house and a lower house. Or maybe the budget is constrained, so there's a unicameral house. This system, let me put this in a different color. I want you to remember this term, right? The system is based on the West Westminster, not minister, Westminster system. Right? And brackets I will put of Britain because that's where we got it from, right? And then we adjust it to suit our needs and our constraints, etc. All right, so take a moment, let process this. Oh, one other thing I do want to say before I give you that moment of quiet. It is possible that some members of the executive might have an overlapping role in the legislative, in the sense that they attend two things. Like if you think about it, the prime minister is in the executive, but the prime minister also has to be a part, he has to attend assemblies and be in parliament and so on, right? The attorney general is part of the judiciary, but also may have a role in the legislative arm when it comes to making new laws, right? So if you are thinking to yourself, well, I know this person in government that I've seen in news, but I'm not sure if the person is in, they have a ministry, but then they also in the house debating this. Understand that sometimes people could have the two roles. One person could have a role in the executive and one person could have a role in the legislative, right? If anybody is confused, please say the chat is open. The chat is open, right? Let me check again. Yes, the chat is open. I am giving us a couple minutes to process. Somebody already told me that's over class early this morning, and that should be a sign that we need to over class early too. I can't promise that, but I could say when we're done discussing executive, legislative, and judiciary, we have one more slide with it in terms of what people actually do in it. If we're close to the end of class, I will not force you to do something else. So never overs class early. Those of you who've taken classes with him before will know that. Usually he overs class late. Like I have to tell him, hey, I need to do things in the space between. Yeah, the military, the army, the Coast Guard, they would fall under judiciary. Judiciary, we think judges, but it's all the people who have to apply and interpret the law. And you could see why you would want to keep them separate from, let me say, the executive arm, because you don't want a leader to be able to call up if they vex with somebody, think somebody did something wrong, to be able to call up somebody in the military and say, go and check so and so, and ask them why they're not done with this contract or why this or that. All right, can I give half a minute again and then we continue? The only homework you will have is to review and finish your notes, right? So we'll post the recording, usually says give them 24 hours. I will post links to the presentation by tonight. All right, last 10 seconds, right? Okay, let's look at, I really tried to to animate this so everything wouldn't just come at you, but the animation didn't cooperate. So everything is here, but let's go through it piece by piece, right? Doesn't make sense. Some people write fast. All right, let me leave the whole thing up. So we're looking in detail now about at what each arm of the government does. What does each arm actually do, right? So before the previous slide, we had like a little description of who they are, who makes them up. But now we're looking at what does each arm do. And yes, please take notes, right? All right, so first one, the executive is the president, the prime minister, the cabinet, right? And remember, we said cabinet, that's the ministers with portfolios, right? They make decisions about policies. If you feel like you wrote this down just now, you know, you can just add the ones that we don't have as yet, right? They say which programs and which services the government is going to invest more funds in, right? They think about how much revenue the government is projected to bring in and how they should allocate those funds to people in need, right? Right. So for a practical example, the clearest example, the easiest example I could think, the fastest example I could think of is in Trinidad has to do with scholarships, right? So at one point in time, a lot of scholarships were available for students to compete for at the Form 6 level, right? Like what, hundreds? Back in my day, it used to be 50, like 10 per category. And of that, two would be open, some would be additional, some would be further additional. And then the government opened it up much more, many more were available. Then another government said, nope, we can't keep spending that much on students leaving the country. So we're going to cut our spending. And instead, we're going to give bursaries. So you can apply for it based on need, and you could apply that money to a local program at UE, right? So this is an example of how a change in approach to a particular issue might result in some programs being prioritized and some services being prioritized over others, right? And if you all can think of other examples, you could tell me. Okay. Identifying projects for ministries. So think of like roadworks. Are we going to repair a road, repair a highway? Well, instead of repair, let me say extend. Repair mightn't be so big a thing. I mean, they repave roads a little more frequently, right? But let me say extend the highway. So extend the highway. This year, are we going to build schools? Are we going to complete and open a hospital? Right? So which projects are we going to settle on for the ministry? Short-term and long-term goals, all right, that seems pretty clear, right? Because we individually have short-term and long-term goals too, right? All right. Put laws into effect. So, and suggest new laws to the government. So let's think of the Ministry of Works, road. No, I think it's Ministry of Works this would fall under. I'm not sure. The speed limit. Let's think about the speed limit, right? So let's say officials in the country notice, well, we need to change the speed limits on the highway, or we need to change the speed limits on certain roads or near to a school, right? The executive will put the law into effect or suggest that the law be made. This does not mean that they are making the law, right? It just, so this is at the end of the process of getting the law. And this is like the start of the process, the suggesting the new law, right? This is like, I'm talking about like a sign off, right? This is the start. And then the middle part of actually making the law falls under the legislature, right? So any law that is created, the prime minister has to sign it, and the prime minister is a member of the executive. The president has to sign it. They are a member of the executive here, right? Yes, so a decision to put a crossing zone, a decision to hire, create a post for a teacher in a school has to go to cabinet. So a minister of education could visit a school and I mean, like probably the school already has a request for a post. Like they need an extra physics teacher, and they in conversation would tell the minister, hey, we need an extra physics teacher, and so they put that on a list of goals they're gonna get through a physics teacher for this particular school, and the post will come up and be approved in cabinet, right? All right, the legislative arm makes the laws, right? So let's focus on understanding everything, and then for homework you could finish writing on the notes. You come back to the recording, come back to the notes, right? So they make the laws. Who is in the legislative parliament, which is bicameral with two houses, upper and lower house, or unicameral with house and legislative council. If you wrote this just now, you don't need to write it back. What are their other functions? They have to debate the laws. So we have to look at how a law is made. They have to approve the national budget. Yes, this is how we're going to spend money. They can conduct inquiries. They can have a hearing. So why is this project to extend the highway still going on? Why is the price so over budget? They call in the people, they ask them questions, they make a decision, right? They confirm posts and appointees to ministry. So this is the example of the teacher to ministries and courts, right? Yes, this person can be hired by the school. Yes, you could have an additional math teacher to teach because your school has grown in number, right? All right, judiciary, interpret the law, settle or adjudicate disputes among people. So like, for instance, examples could be divorce, custody, awarding damages, settling a lawsuit, right? Putting away a criminal, etc. They advise the government, right, on whether or not things are legal. Like let's say the government wants to pass a particular law, they will say, yes, this will not infringe any rights of citizens, or they might say, sorry, but you can't have a state of emergency for so long because that is not in the Constitution. You can only do it for X amount of weeks, right? All right, review whether or not government action, okay, so that's what I just explained there. Government action and legislation are constitutional, right? Legal. All right, so take a look at this slide, see if there are any questions that you have and you want to ask. If there's nothing you want to ask, this is the last thing that we're doing today, right? Because we're almost at 1:15. Right, so your job will be to finish up the note. Like I'm just coming out to this for a second so I could share the PowerPoint link with you before some people disappear. That's the link to the website, but oh, that's the link to the game. Where is my, here we go. All right. Oh my God, sorry. All right, I will post this on the website a little bit later. Right, but if you are very organized and you want to save the link now, this is the link to the PowerPoint. Right, and again, this is the link to the website. So people who are on YouTube, I can't share the link there, but what you could do is come back to the recording when it's still posted and you'll see the link to PowerPoint with the pages, right? All right, guys. So I'm leaving this open. Remember, if you have questions, message and say, right? But this is the last thing we're doing. So once you're done with the note, you all are free to go enjoy the rest of your Sunday. All right, guys, I want to close this in a minute. So if you want to take a screenshot or plan to come back to the recording, right?